It's been about a month since we tackled a Dynasty Superflex startup mock draft. This time, we'll obviously have the rookies involved. Last time we did this, I believe, was April 14th. So we didn't have landing spots. We didn't have draft capital for all these guys. Going to be an interesting way to gauge kind of how the rookies fit into the Dynasty startup landscape. And for those of you guys that are joining us, there is one more day left to get into our next listener league, which will be drawing names for tomorrow. So if you guys do want a chance to be in a league with us, this is the best way you can do that. Annual subscribers to Flock Fantasy using promo code FSE is how you enter. If you're an annual flocker, you get one entry. If you're an annual mother flocker, you get two entries. We got, I don't know, about 30, 25-ish names in the pool right now. So you got a pretty good chance of actually getting into the league if you do want a spot in there. So like I said, the best way to do that, or the only way, I guess, to sign up and be a part of that is to be an annual subscriber over on flockfantasy.com. And of course, you also get tons of other stuff, our dynasty rankings, all that good stuff there. We are waiting for this draft to fill up, and then we will get right into it. So we got, I don't know, about 8 of you guys in here. The link is in the chat to join the mock draft. You can see the scoring settings in the top left corner there. A Dynasty Superflex 1.5 tight end premium, 3rd round reversal, 6 point per passing touchdown. So we're getting a little in the weeds here in terms of dynasty settings, but this should be fun. This should be a very quarterback heavy draft. Probably some tight ends going off pretty high too. 3rd round reversal to me is communism, is socialism here. I'm not a huge fan of 3rd round reversal, but a lot of people seem to like it. So
let's just give the Josh Allen owner also the 301, which is by far the most valuable 3rd round pick. Is, I mean, I'm sure you can relate to this, but once you get to like the 307, the 308,
no, I can't relate, Danny, because I never get the first pick.
Fair, but like just in general for 3rd round texture in drafts, it's like the 301 is so much better than the back end 3rd rounders.
It is funny. 100%.
But yeah, so giving the Josh Allen owner that guy is not ideal, I would say. But regardless, draft settings, draft order, gonna hit the little randomizer. We are indeed filled, and let's see where we pick. So looks like Fletsky's picking from his classic 112. Did I get Jude of a spot?
You might have, yeah.
Oh, that's not ideal. Okay.
You're not in the draft, so it looks like
I clicked into a spot. I don't know why I got screwed out of it, but it's fine. Hey, to be fair, we can draft together. More of you get to enjoy it with us, so you can actually hear some dialogue on the clock between two managers, which is nice. But regardless,
hey, we got more spots for you guys involved. It is a 60-second timer. Again, do not get fired. But yeah, we're starting the draft up. I'm picking, or I guess both of us are picking here from the 106 classic 112 Fletsky, but it is a 3rd round reversal, so you do get a decent second or a decent 3rd rounder out of it, and you get to pick out that 301. So me and you are, I'm already sensing we're going to disagree on the clock unless Lamar Jackson falls here, but we'll see here.
Lamar Jackson goes. So if you guys
you'd
are
be
unaware,
surprised who I actually have ranked here. I don't have Joe Burrow ranked here.
Okay. So the way I would say this is, obviously, as you know, I have the wide receiver 6 to 8 in my rankings. If we're going to take a quarterback, though, it's got to be Caleb Williams. That's my only
I have Caleb Williams. I made this switch today, actually. I made a big update to my dynasty rankings, went through all my overalls and skimmed through everything. Made sure I had some guys that I had a little bit too low. I know, like running back, I had Zamir White and Kendre Miller a little bit too low. Yeah. Some guys like that. So I'm okay going Caleb Williams here because, I mean, the more I look at it, Caleb Williams projects pretty well, even year one, given the supporting cast that he has. His value accumulation potential over Joe Burrow is a lot higher. I personally would prefer Joe Burrow, like just in a vacuum, like on the open market, if you're a competitive team, but out of a startup, I can understand going with Caleb Williams because he allows you that flexibility to go with more of a 1-year punt, more of a productive struggle out of the startup. Whereas Burrow, given that he's like 28 years old already, you're kind of a little bit pigeonholed into contending. Although he's a quarterback, he's still young enough that you could rebuild around him. It's just that you would rather rebuild around a guy that has more accumulation potential.
100%. And again, I'll capitulate with Caleb Williams. Typically, I would take a wide receiver there, but Caleb Williams, if you're going to take a quarterback that can be 101 next year, I don't mind moving him up the boards. I know for the majority of people, they're more comfortable seeing him in the 8 to 10 area, but you got to get aggressive when it comes to a young quarterback like Caleb Williams, because I know we make the CJ Stroud comp, and it's funny because they're obviously only separated by 3 spots, but the ceiling for Caleb Williams, I would say, given the arm talent, given the outer structure play, given the weapons core over there in Chicago, especially from a long-term perspective, because although you can argue that the Texans this year have a better weapons core, having Roma Dunze on that rookie contract, having DJ Moore being a little bit younger, I feel more confident in that versus, Nico, Stephon Diggs, and Tank Dell.
Yeah. I'm it's hard to say that like a guy who just had like the best rookie season ever is only 3 spots ahead of a guy who hasn't played it down in the NFL yet. Like that's a little bit of a scary situation. But again, I don't know if you've noticed this. If you try and trade for Caleb Williams in leagues right now,
it's impossible.
You could make the argument it's harder to trade for him than even Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts, who went ahead of him. And it's definitely, I've noticed, harder to trade for him than it would be for Burrow and for Herbert and for Richardson and some of the guys that go after him.
Well, I mean, the prime example is this offseason alone, because I just mentioned my decision point at the 6 would be between Caleb and the 3 wide receivers. This offseason alone, I think I've made 4 or 5 trades for a Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, or CeeDee Lamb. So it's more attainable to get these guys, and it's more easily able to make deals. Because the thing is, when you're making a trade offer for a wide receiver, you don't need to give a quarterback back. When you're usually trying to tier up a quarterback, the person that is selling that quarterback expects a high-priced quarterback back. So like you kind of mentioned, it's kind of harder to deal in the market when you're dealing with top-end quarterbacks.
Yeah, and again, like I would have Caleb Williams and Joe Burrow like spitting close to each other. And to be honest, in a room like this where all of you guys do, tend to go young, tend to go for youth, like I might even go Burrow, knowing that if I'd done my research pre-rookie or pre-startup draft, that like a lot of people want to go young, maybe it does actually make sense to build out more of a competitive build here. So for me, I want to take a look at the quarterback position. Drake May, I believe, would be the highest rated quarterback for me. We could just stack up these double rookie quarterbacks if we want to. Garrett Wilson, I think, would be my highest rated wide receiver at this point on the board. Too early for me Breece Hall, we could go as well. I think it's too early for him slightly because I would prefer to go with a wide receiver or with Drake May. I'll let you make the call here. To me, it'd probably be between Wilson and May.
Your call between them. I would have Drake May leaned higher, and maybe because we have Caleb, you want to double up with the young quarterback because obviously they both fit the same window. But if you want the top end wide receiver, hoping one falls back, that's another option too, though. I will say
let's go with Wilson because I think if we take Drake May, we're just going to be completely in the trap of just drafting this entire rookie class. If we do that, we're just going to draft only young players. So let's go with Wilson and see what falls back to us.
Keeps us more liquid too, because who knows?
What? Oh, it was okay. It's because it's me. That's why. It's because it's me. You can't make the pick.
Yeah, you gotta do that.
Sorry, my bad. I thought you were just making the pick because you're the one sharing your screen.
Yeah.
Anyways,
sorry. I just see this. When's the next Dynasty decision? Just have my draft and submitted my team earlier this week. So we actually put one out this past week. We'll try to get one out this week, if not for this upcoming weekend. But I don't know. We'll talk about it. Me and Corey.
Yeah, I'm gonna move us up here so the comments don't cover our faces. But I would say that we'll probably record one this weekend potentially, or like on Monday or something. It is actually a long weekend in Canada here, so we're probably gonna take a day off or something like that. I'm going up to my cottage this weekend. You're going to Toronto this weekend, so we do have some things that we're doing. But early next week, I would say, is the latest that we'll have a new Dynasty Decisions episode. Keenan, first one in here. He had a couple questions that I figured we'd get to while we got some time here. One quarterback start 8 question. Won the chip the first year of the startup. Have Mahomes, Barkley, Swift, loaded team, obviously, that you can see there. Should he send Pollard, Leggett, and a 2025 first? He says /second, so I'm assuming that means both, plus 2026 second for Marvin.
It does not seem like a bit of an overpay value-wise, in my opinion. That would be a steal for Marvin.
Yeah, one quarterback start 8. I mean, you're looking at a top 3 to 5 startup.
That could be a 12
available for Pollard, Leggett. Okay, whatever.
That could be a 12-team start 12.
You're also getting a 2 back on top of that with Marvin too. So you cancel it that 1 second there as well. Yeah, to me, this is definitely Marvin.
Yeah, it's pretty simple to me. Like this could be a Superflex start 12 league, and I would still want that side. Also, appreciate Bindles, another gifted membership. Appreciate that, brother.
Yeah, for sure. And for those of you guys, I don't think we ever plug our memberships. Basically, all it gets you, I would say, like we don't really have a whole like package behind it, is that we'll prioritize your comments during live streams. So, I mean, right now it's not as big of a deal because there's
especially
not as many
in
people in this live stream. During the season, if you're trying to get questions answered, that's basically where the value for that comes from there.
Appreciate that, brother. I'm so shocked. Oh, he's shocked at the 112. Okay.
Yeah.
We left off here. Yo, what's up, Smooth? What's up? I would easily send that for Marv. Yeah, I completely agree there, Brock. What's up, boys? Happy Friday. Appreciate that, Bobcat. Happy Friday to you as well. Traded the 101 Caleb Williams for the 102 and Drake May. What do you guys? This is a steal, in my opinion. Like Caleb Williams, we just mentioned how like there may not be too high of a price to pay given what his market value's kind of been, but this would be too high of a price to pay. If you telling me I can get Drake May and Marvin Harrison straight up for Caleb Williams, I'm doing it every single time. I mean, I mentioned to you when we were talking about the post NFL draft rookie draft strategy, how I basically traded the 101 plus the 106 for the 102, 103 with Marv and Drake May in my hindsight or in my eyes there. So in my targets there. So the fact that you didn't even have to include the 106 in this deal, slam dunk.
Speaking of Drake May, like we take him here,
yes.
right?
Yeah. What?
Yeah, he fell back to us.
Okay, we take those. Hey, good,
it was 3 RR, so I think it was actually a further distance.
Yeah, it was.
It wasn't 3 RR because we're picking 106 here, so or maybe it's the exact same distance. I don't know how the math works. It's a little bit further, I think. So we'll take Drake May at the 307 when we might have taken him at the 207. Good shell of a productive struggle so far. So one thing that we can't obviously do when we're doing a startup mock draft live on YouTube, that's a fast draft and not a slow draft. If me and you had a start like this on a team that we were co-owning, all of our startup picks are going to be like trade downs, try and accumulate value going forward, correct?
Wait, sorry, repeat that?
Like we get to 406 with our next pick. If we had a start of these 3 players and we're looking to trade down, collect future firsts, collect future seconds, like that would be the strategy after our first 3 selections because we already have our 2 future quarterbacks nailed down and our wide receiver 1 nailed down who's 23 years old. So me and you would probably convert to the mindset of, we're accumulating value. People are going to want to come up, send their 2025 first, give us their 7th round startup pick for our 406 or whatever. And like, there's been startups, both of us have done this. You did it this offseason. I've done it in years past where out of the first 7 rounds of the startup, you've made 3 selections and you collected, 3 firsts in the process.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite ways to have a startup. And it's funny now because like a lot of my teams are competing at this point, but the majority of the startups that I ended up taking on in these last few years have been with a 1-year punt mentality. Now, it's harder to exact in our listener leagues because you guys obviously listen to the content, you know what we're trying to do, and it's kind of hard to get the exact value we'd be looking for in some of these trade downs, knowing that everybody in the draft wants to trade down. But especially like, for example, I'll show you guys my Mickey Mouse League team in a second, but this is a team that basically endured a 2-year punt. I kept getting a ton of future value, kept getting a ton of future picks. And if I show you the product right now from when the team was when the offseason started versus where it's at now, like we're talking about, I had 3 usable players at the start of the offseason, and now my team is a juggernaut.
Yeah, that's what happens when you build up that liquidity too. Because the other like underrated part of that is people start to see how good your team is getting, and then they want to start rebuilding their team. And obviously, you already are in possession of a lot of those future picks, and they've since gained value because they're trying to trade for 2024 first. Now you got them for free pretty much out of the startup, and they're trying to trade for 2025 ones now, and they were pretty much not even thought of as anything in the startup or whenever you traded for them. So yeah, that's the other underrated part of it is that people see what you're doing, see that it's working, and want to do it themselves because that's kind of what's happened. Do we want to go McBride or Bowers here, or do we want to go with a wide receiver?
I was going to bring up my decision point on the clock here. Like obviously we're picking together would be between probably like a Jalen Waddle type versus a Brock Bowers or Jay McBride. I'll let you make that decision.
I like our prospects of still getting a tight end with our next pick. So I think let's go Waddle probably here, and then we'll see kind of what falls back to us. I'm looking at the board. I mean, Worthy would be my next ranked like super young receiver, but I think like Waddle would be a guy that I would have to definitely take over him. So let's go Jalen Waddle here and see if one of like McBride or Bowers falls back to you. It's very possible that neither of those guys fall back to us, but
they probably both
we'll
go.
See what happens the next pick we got.
Like, I'd be shocked now with McBride off the board if Bowers went past Fletsky's pick. But, I mean, regardless, like, this is the type of FSC room. Like, outside of Laporta going in the second round, we do see the second, third plus tight end kind of fall a little bit because that's what we've noticed in our leagues that I don't know if it's just us being anti-tight end, but, like, there's, like, no trade market in our leagues for tight ends.
Yeah, no, it's difficult, man. I think tight end is one of the more hard markets to really gauge league to league because I think some leagues really recognize the value of in a tight end premium league having Brock Bowers or having Trey McBride or having Sam Laporta. But then there's some leagues out there where it's going to take people actually seeing how the scores look during the season in that kind of league, the difference between those guys and say a Jake Ferguson or an Evan Ingram or whatever. Because to be honest, when I get to like redraft projection and stuff, like Evan Ingram's going to be putting up similar points to Trey McBride. I think that's not a hot take. Like, obviously, Trey McBride's younger. He's going to have more accumulation potential and that kind of thing. But and as far as raw point production, like, I actually don't think it'll be a huge difference. And that's why I've been avoiding this area of the tight end position, especially given the build that we have. Like, we can also afford to take the swing on TJ Hawkinson if he falls a couple more rounds too, because we're not really in a position right now where we're going to be looking to compete. So he also kind of unlocks some of those things. And then when you look at the pure producers, George Kittles and Travis Kelce's, those guys, like, I have George Kittle over Trey McBride in my redraft rankings.
You do? Wow.
I do. That might be a hot take, but I like the Spike Week King himself. George Kittle absolutely cooks for Spike Week. So that's why I like him from a redraft perspective, even though McBride's probably the more consistent guy.
So for reference, our best ball rankings, my top 150, if you guys actually have your membership over on Flock, you should be able to access at this current point. So I'm assuming yours are up as well. You put your
mine. I did an update of mine today as well when I was doing my my Dynasty rankings update.
So in terms of my current rankings, my tier 1 at tight end. So for reference, Kincaid and Kittle would kind of be the start of the tier 2, though you could even argue that there's a tier 2 and a tier 2.5 once you get down to like Ingram, Ferguson, and Njoku. But right now, my tier 1 would be Laporta 1, McBride 2, Kelce 3, Pitts 4, Andrews 5. Tier 2 for me would be Kincaid, Kittle, Bowers, Ingram, Ferguson, and Njoku. But like I kind of said, like, after Bowers, I would say between Bowers and Ingram, or even Ingram and Ferguson, you can kind of also look at that as a little bit of a mini tier.
Yeah. No, I'm on the same page. Only I think Kelce is like, this is the first year I'm going to be in on Kelce apparently, because I think he should be closer to Laporta than he should be to tight end.
I agree.
To be honest. But you said you had McBride over Kelce, didn't you?
No. I thought you said closer to Laporta than people make it seem. No, I still have McBride higher, but Kelce and McBride are literally back to back in my rankings as early 3rd round or early 4th round picks.
Okay, where do we want to go with this pick? To me, I believe McConkey would be my highest rated wide receiver right now.
B-Tom would be mine, but I'm cool capitulating because they're literally back to back in my rankings.
Okay, so I have McConkey like.
There's a bigger
top
gap.
24 wide receivers, and I think I have Thomas at like 28. So like I actually have a small difference between those two guys. Let's go with Ladd here, and we'll maybe Thomas will fall back to us because he's kind of buried down the ADP a little bit too.
He's actually at the top of the ADP for me. Oh no, I was on rookies only. I'm actually stupid as heck.
yeah, I would say he'd probably be at the top of those. But I like the build that we have so far. I mean, we got our 2 young quarterbacks, 3 wide receivers, 25 years old and younger. I mean, Waddle's a smidge on the older side for the build that we have, but it's not a big deal. He's still going to be in his prime a year or 2 from now.
And I will say, like, this is a stomachable price for the running backs in this room. Because, like, seeing, obviously, you know, Bijan, I'd argue a little bit too high for me at the 2-4, more of a back-end second. But kind of like where Breece Hall, Jahmyr Gibbs are going is where I about that tier, I would say, back-end second. But after that, too, we are seeing the actual evidence of a fall off in terms of how drafters are drafting them. Because a lot of rooms, like, once those 3 go off the board, like, you'll see, like, you know, Taylor, McCaffrey, ETN, HN, Barkley all kind of get pushed up around. But kind of feels like in this room particularly, they're had at a price that I'd be willing to take them at, which usually isn't the case.
Yeah, I would take Jonathan Taylor at the 312 all day. But again, this is a room where I would assume most of you guys are following us. You probably don't really love running backs as much as we don't love running backs.
5'11" Kyron's a great price.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 5'11" Kyron, that's a great price. 5'8" Barkley for a competitive roster too. Like, had Cousins had Barkley fallen to him, his start would have been Jalen Hurts, Breece Hall, Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon, man. Like, you got 3 legendary upside running backs on that roster if he had fallen to you. I know you don't want to go that light at wide receiver, but that would be very, very enticing pairing those 3 RBs together.
For sure. So 107 and 112 for MHJ at 103, a good price. For context, I'm pushing the chips. If you're pushing the chips, this is a good price, even if you're not pushing the chips. Well, okay, real question. What would you be willing to pay to trade up for Marv? Because honest to God, like, you could tell me that this trade plus an extra 2025 first, I would still quite comfortably take Marv.
Yeah, I would maybe try, like, I would probably do that, but I would maybe try and squeeze a second next year back on the other side if you were doing that. Like, if you're giving him 107, 112, and a first in 2025 for Marvin and a 2025 too, I think that's probably a pretty balanced trade. But like you said, I would maybe even be willing to just do the first straight without it.
Because the way I contextualize it is, so Marv is going to go at the 1-2 turn.
Like, look at his team too. Look at his receiving core.
Yeah, like, and I was gonna say like JJ McCarthy is my 107 right now, is more of like a back end third round type of startup pick. So if you're telling me what's the cost to move from the back end of the third round in a startup to the 1-2 turn, it's gonna cost more than the 112. And I mean, I just mentioned I'd throw on a 2025 first on that, but it might even genuinely cost more than that, in my opinion.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Nobody's willing to do that. Like if you're selling Marv, nobody's going to give you that type of price tag. Like
No.
I've tried to sell Marv and Caleb this offseason, and it's so funny because like 3 years ago when we were talking about this class, they're like, oh, you're going to get Godfather offers for the 101 in 2024. You're going to get Godfather
People just
offers for
don't
the
like
102 in
trading
2024.
it seems
Those
like.
Godfather offers never seem to actually come to fruition.
Well, you know
That's
what's
fine.
happened,
I'll
right?
just take the player.
You know what's happened, right? Because the Dynasty market as a whole has changed so much in the last 3 years, to the point where people back then were so focused on, oh, rookies, big question mark, not a great investment because we don't know if they're going to hit or not. It's like people are starting to wisen up to the fact that just because you have rookie picks doesn't mean you are adding rookies to your team. It's the asset and the value of knowing that that asset value won't go down. Sorry, I said value of knowing the asset value won't go down. That probably made no sense English-wise, but basically the premise there is knowing that you're investing in a foolproof asset, man. Like you're investing in a high savings account, to be honest.
Yeah. Do we want to take like George Pickens, a Jaden Reed, somebody like that here, or do we want to maybe like tight end? I think I would rather have Hawkinson with our next pick if he falls back to us.
Yeah, I can't take Hawkinson here, not at all. I
Running
would rather
backs. I
just
mean,
keep
there's
waiting.
young guys, but I'm not really investing in that position. We could take a swing on Bryce here or Nix or Levis.
If we're going to take a running back, it would be Pacheco, but I'm also cool just staying at wide receiver.
Okay, let's grab another wideout because this is like you can see the roster of this team. It's a 3 wide receiver start, so we would want to be strong here. Do you want to go Pickens, Jaden Reed, or Rashee Rice?
Who do I have? You know what? We have 3 wide receivers. So I think this is the time where we take the upside on Rice.
I can't. I would take Pickens over him.
Take who you want then. Like they're
yeah. Like so, what if Pickens and Reed had been gone? Because I actually recently moved Reed up my rankings as well.
How high do you have him, by the way?
Reed and Pickens.
Yeah, so right now, for the record, I have Pickens at 28, Reed at 30, Rice at 31. But the reason why I advocated for Rice is given the context of knowing the upside and knowing that he's our wide receiver 4. I don't mind that. But I'm curious, like, where do you have those 3 respectively ranked?
I have Pickens at 25, Jaden Reed at 26, and I have Rashee Rice at 37.
Oh, so there's like a catastrophic difference for you. Okay.
There is a large difference. The other part of it is like knowing that there's a big, large tier of competitive receivers. And it's not a huge difference just among like younger receivers. But in terms of like you have to put Debo and Adams and Evans in somewhere. And that's kind of they fall in between those guys.
So I have Rice above those guys. So basically that would be the difference for the record. Rice 31, like I said, Reed 30, JSN 29, Pickens 28. And then I'm curious. So then that means you have DK lower, Addison lower, Pittman lower?
Yes, DK, Addison, and no, Pittman I have 1 spot ahead of Pickens and 2 spots ahead of Rice.
Who do you have lower than Pickens then? Like
I have Thomas lower.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have Brian Thomas at 28 behind Jordan Addison, Jaden Reed, George Pickens, and Michael Pittman, respectively.
Yeah, soon enough, you'll be pumping that number up. He's my 18th.
To me, that's way too high for a guy that has a chance to faceplant his rookie season.
Sure, but
I love the Jags offense. Like you won't find people higher on the Jags offense than me, but I think it's very possible that Brian Thomas Jr. struggles to get snaps, targets, and routes early on in his career, and it'll represent a buying window for me. So that's why I haven't like with McConkey and Worthy. I feel very comfortable that they are going to start from day one.
No, sure. I think that's definitely fair. I will say, though, the premise of like, oh, he's not going to start it. Like, he's still going in the top 65 picks of best ball right now.
That's a projection based on the style of tournament that you're playing. That will not be the case come redraft season, in my opinion. I think the reason he's going that high in best ball is because all of the money is at the top and people want that second half of the season breakout.
Sure, but even you mentioned the down case of a guy like Quentin Johnson. Quentin Johnson was going in like round 9 or 10 last year.
Right, but Quentin Johnson had a cleaner path to start, and he also had the nutted guys got injured ahead of him on the depth chart situation.
I was actually arguing the inverse because if he had a cleaner projection going into the year, but Brian Thomas has a 3-round advantage in terms of where he's going, that means the market's just more confident on Brian Thomas.
That's true, but in 2 wide receiver sets, I believe to start the year will be Christian Kirk and Gabe Davis in 2 wide receiver sets.
They're probably going to base out of 11 though, with all 3 of those wide receivers.
Yeah, most likely. You're right. I don't know. And I worry about the player as well. The player that I scouted looked like he had some rough and tumble situation.
I'm just higher on him.
Adjusting to the NFL. For me, I find it to be a risk for Brian Thomas. This has been a disconnect for me and you since the first time we watched B-Tom, is that I think he's a lot more raw than you think he is.
Yeah, for sure. We're on the clock,
this
though.
Is Hawkinson now for me. I'm comfortable pulling the trigger on Hawkinson given our build.
I've
made the last couple picks, so I'll let you make this one.
There's just a couple wide receivers I still like. Like the running back board's kind of obliterated, so we can't go there. So it would probably be wide receiver or Hawkinson for me, unless, I mean, dude, Will Levis is here.
You want to take Levis then?
Levis at 7.7 is pretty insane.
Okay,
no?
let's go with Levis. That makes sense. Again, I'm thinking about our build, man, and I think if you contextualize that you're punting first year, I think that I would take Hawkinson on the level of McBride and Pitts and Kincaid. Like if you contextualize that year one, I don't care
view
about
him in that
production.
area. I think there's more risk of him coming off of that multi-ligament tear. And he goes next pick. So like this is about the range where he will be going. But at the same time, for me, it's just, again, like you said, younger team, risk management perspective. Like if Hawkinson has a bad year this year, like let's say he rushes back from the knee injury, has a tight end 9 year with tight end 13 in points, or tight end 13 year with tight end 9 in points per game. Like he's probably going to decrease in value. And
I don't think so, to be honest, because I think people understand coming off of an ACL tear, we're sacrificing a little bit of production. The guy was tight end 2 in fantasy points per game last year and tight end 4 the year before that. Like I think had Hawkinson not gotten injured, he would legitimately potentially be tight end 2 in Dynasty right now.
Oh, I don't think he'd be tight
on the market, not for us, on the market. I think he has he would have closed out the season and potentially been the tight end 1 in redraft last year.
Like for what it's worth in my Dynasty rankings, where do I have Hawkinson in my Superflex? Let me take a look. Like Hawkinson, I have Kittle rated higher. But again, given the context of our build, obviously I understand not taking Kittle because he's literally 3 years older.
Like, dude, Pitts and Kincaid, I'm not even certain are good tight ends.
Oh, Pitts, I'm certain.
I'm not certain he's a good. I'm not certain he's a good fantasy producing tight end.
Sure. I will say though, I had to raise Kincaid a little bit because I think I was too low on him.
Hawkinson quite literally doubled Pitts' production last year.
Oh, for sure. But again, that's a multi-ligament tear. And I would argue that Pitts was playing through his PCL surgery last year because he actually had a multi-ligament surgery in the surgery on multiple ligaments in the offseason last year on his knee. Pitts,
yeah,
nobody realized the PCL
one. Injury to come back from. I just think Hawkinson's being disrespected. It's nothing to do with Pitts and Kincaid. I think they're properly valued, to be honest. I just think that Hawkinson, if you're punting the first year of a team, makes a whole lot of sense for that type of build because I actually don't view his market value as fragile. I think that if he has a rough season this year, he'll be going the same spot, 7th, 6th round. And if he does look better at the end of the season, if JJ McCarthy looks good, and, Hawkinson has a fine close to the season because he's back healthy, we're talking about a guy who's back to being a top 5 tight end in Dynasty.
Yeah, like for reference, again, I guess I would be considered a little bit lower, and I have him 86 overall. So when you're equating it out, the end of the 7th gets you to the 84th overall pick. So I have him more so as a start of an 8th rounder. So you have him more so as a mid-6?
So including all of the rookie picks that we have in our rankings, he's at 86th overall for me, but you don't have the 24 picks into your rookie rankings on the site yet, or into your Superflex rankings onto the site yet. So he'll probably drop to like 95 or something for you once you put them in. So I'm about 10 spots ahead of market, probably, I would say.
Yeah, no, fair. Again, I was just looking at the overall ranking. So without the actual pick in the algorithm included, he's 86 overall for me. Though obviously that's still including the rookie class, just not including the actual rookie pick label.
Yeah. Like I said, I think I'm probably a smidge higher than you are. So we're back on the clock here. Tight end has gotten kind of picked over. Kittle doesn't really fit our build, but I do think he'd be a fine value at this point if we want to just take a value pick. But I find him hard to trade. I don't know about you. If you just draft him with the intention of trading, he's somewhat hard to do that with. Benson to me stands out at running back as somebody that I would definitely be willing to take here.
Benson's still available?
Yeah, Benson's still available.
Yeah, we're taking Trey Benson for sure.
Yeah, I was just looking. That's who I was looking for. I was scrolling down. I'm like, do we see Brooks or Benson on the board still? Because to me, the fact that like James Cook and Benson are in at least on the same level to me, and same with Jacobs, Pacheco, Walker, those type of guys. Like if they went 2 rounds ahead of Benson, to me that's a mispriced running back.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny because I thought Benson was off the board. I was actually going to make the case for another rookie player here, but I'm not gonna say it out loud. But I'm assuming everybody who's in the draft and watching the stream knows who I'm referring to.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, let's get to some questions here while we got some time. Andrew says, how would you ever do an auction startup? I've never done one. It definitely sounds like an intriguing idea. I would probably want to do it in person if I were to do it. I wouldn't want to do an auction startup that's like online in like Sleeper personally. That would be the only thing I would say about auction.
Yeah, I agree.
Is Olave and Waddle for ARSB an overpay? It would depend on the scoring format, how many starting spots you have. Like if it's a shallow league, I don't think it's an overpay, but I think I would take Olave and Waddle in like a start 10, start 11, full PPR, 3 wide receiver start type of format.
Like for reference, when I was trying to deal for Amon-Ra St. Brown, I would prefer London to Olave, but I know the market kind of views them relatively similarly, give or take. Like right now, I mean, where does London versus Olave go in the startup? Olave goes at the 3.10, London goes at the 3.5. And again, I would have like at least London with a second of difference between them, knowing the projection with the quarterback there with Kirk Cousins versus me not having the same confidence with Derek Carr. But the deal I was trying to make was London plus a first for Amon-Ra St. Brown plus a second pretty much was the bare bones here. So I felt like I was paying a decent bit then when I was going through that. So this is even more.
Yeah, I agree. It's a tough price to pay, in my opinion. As much as St. Brown's dominant. And I had this thought, you know how we get in our little box of like groupthink a little bit in the Dynasty community?
Yeah.
I have one. This guy's my wide receiver 1 in Dynasty. So this is not meant to be slander. But why is Amon-Ra St. Brown not in the first tier of Dynasty wide receivers? And potentially, why is he not even ahead of Jamar Chase?
Okay, so we actually had a comment about that. And it was a fascinating comment. Obviously, I gave my response to it. So I'll actually read off exactly how I replied because I think I summed it up very well when I replied to this. But from a straight production standpoint, like obviously when you're talking about redraft projections, if Jamar Chase is going 5th overall, Amon-Ra St. Brown is going 6th overall. So to that credit, they should be on the same tier. The way I summed it up is I have no question marks about the status of Chase, Jefferson, and Lamb being undisputed elite superstar talents regardless of situation. I don't have that same confidence with Amon-Ra. Maybe that's just my own bias kicking in, but I feel like that's a market share sentiment as to why he's not part of that top tier. And the question mark that I have is Ben Johnson, hot head coaching candidate. If he leaves next offseason, Dan Campbell, yes, he's technically an offensive-based guy, but he's not known as this schematic guru like Ben Johnson is. Is he able to optimize Amon-Ra St. Brown's usage with the new OC? That's the question mark I have. Again, he is still strongly a top 5 dynasty wide receiver for me. And I actually view, like we talked about in the rankings video, him and Marv kind of being in tier 1B or 2A, if you will, kind of before the next group of guys. But that's the big question mark for me. I just don't see the superstar level talent that leaks off the screen with CeeDee Lamb, that leaks off the screen with Justin Jefferson, that leaks off the screen with Jamar Chase, to the point where if they go through a bad stretch, I feel like the market is more forgiving for those guys based off the overall consensus appeal of what their talent levels are.
Yeah, that's fair. I'll give my response in a second. We got to make a pick here.
Yeah.
Do we want to go with the tight end at this point? I mean, Evan Ingram to me is a pretty decent value. I know he's a little bit older and he doesn't really fit our build, but
I'm honestly just cool and waiting on Sanat knowing our build.
Okay, do we want to go back to wide receiver then? Like, who are we looking at here?
Let's go young receiver maybe.
I mean, Derrick Henry also is on the board at running back. Same with Javonte Williams too.
Yeah. What? The sport's kind of gross. So a wide receiver maybe? No, we
got 9 seconds. Pick one. And I'll
you pick. Just pick one.
Okay. I think Ridley's a value. He's a guy that we would just flip, to be honest. I think he's ranked ahead of these guys for me.
Yeah, that's who I was leaning as well. I just didn't have my rankings open, and I knew you did. So
okay. So on the Amon-Ra point, my counter to that, Ben Johnson, fair argument, I think.
Yeah.
However, he didn't leave this offseason, so it seems like he's pretty committed to that situation long term. Second, Amon-Ra St. Brown got a contract extension. Jared Goff got a contract extension. So they are, like, even though he's situation dependent, quote unquote, they're kind of locked into the same situation now for the next couple of years.
Sure.
And Jamar Chase does not have a contract extension. So it's
He
possible.
will.
I don't think that he's going
He will.
anywhere. Don't get me wrong.
Same with Lamb.
But
He will.
it's not like one guy's locked in, one guy's not. Like Amon-Ra actually is locked in for the next couple of years. And in full PPR formats, he's been the more consistent guy. He's been the more healthy guy. Like, again, I actually still prefer Chase, but I don't think it's an outrageous argument. And I agree with you. It is absolutely a 1B tier of Marvin Harrison Jr. and Amon-Ra St. Brown after those top three guys.
So it's funny,
in
right?
Redraft,
Because,
sorry, I would hear arguments to take St. Brown over Chase in Redraft, 100%.
well, I would agree. And you mentioned like he is your one, but like, and Jamar Chase is my two, knowing the insulation to Burrow long-term potential. Again, projecting that him, CD and Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson are all going to get their extensions. But at the same time, if there's one of the top three wide receivers, you would make the case of Amon-Ra being straight up over in Dynasty. The answer to me would be Jamar Chase, because quite simply, he hasn't had the 23 PPR point per game season that CeeDee Lamb had last year. And Justin Jefferson the year before, I believe he was at about 21.5 or 22. So although Jamar Chase has shown that elite ceiling in his rookie season, he hasn't had that dominant wide receiver one overall point per game season quite yet. Whereas with Amon-Ra St. Brown, given the situation, if that stays, consistent in the long term, does have that appeal. Because, I mean, he averaged, 21.5 last year, right?
Yeah, so both of these guys, Chase and St. Brown, have had a season over 20 points per game. Barely. No. Both of them. Barely. So, like, they have had the same ceiling, realistically. It's just that they got there in different ways where, Jamar Chase was 20.2 PPR points per game his second season on a 12-game season where he was injured a little bit, and people, that's some of their knock against him. So what are we doing on the board here? To me, I look around, I think... I honestly don't love it. I think I would be okay taking a stab at RB here on like a Tajay Spears potentially.
Yeah, I mean, Tajay Spears would probably be my pick here. Did all the other rookies go?
The receiver board's pretty disgusting right now, so I think that's probably where I'm going to go with Spears. And technically we could stack Caleb Williams with Cole Kmet in that situation, but that feels like a pretty sexless pick there. So
in the 10th round, that's disgusting.
Yeah, I will say Cole Kmet is a semi underrated dynasty tight end just because he's a proven target earner.
Yeah, but the question mark I have is he's never had to compete for targets with three legitimate star-level target producers that I think Odunze, Moore, and Allen can represent in that offense. And not to mention... He
still was productive last year with DJ Moore commanding targets, and he had the spike weeks and the touchdown production in a very run-heavy offense with Justin Fields there.
But to be fair, Allen and Odunze weren't there, and I would say from a pure out-of-the-backfield pass-catching perspective, DeAndre Swift's a big upgrade to that team versus even what Herbert / who was Roshan and the
Roshan and yeah.
Was it Deontay Foreman?
I'm not arguing Cole Kmet's an elite tight end, but as like a 12th round pick, if you punt the position, I don't think he's terrible.
I think if I punted the position, I would just keep punting because I know realistically, what's the difference between Cole Kmet versus oncoming late second, early third rounder Colston Loveland next year? Right?
Tight ends miss at a high rate, man. I think if you're going to take Cole Kmet in round 11 or 12 as your main tight end, you want to pair him with Dallas Goedert, Dalton Schultz, Pat Freiermuth, Ben Sinnott, Jatavian Sanders, something like Kmet that. I don't think that's Goddard? A terrible punt strategy at tight end.
So you have Kmet over Goddard straight up?
Yeah, I do.
Fair enough. Okay.
He's younger and he's been basically as productive, and I project the Bears to probably be a more pass-heavy team. And if it's Odunze and DJ Moore long-term, that's no different than A.J. Brown and Smith.
So you're going to like my trade with Ronnie Moore. On the principle, I know you didn't like it with the May acquisition, but with the context of it being the contending team, I kind of got Kmet as a throw in there to be my backup tight end because I have Laporta.
Yeah, I mean, he was just a throw into that trade. No, I think that the concept of giving up Mayworthy in the first was the part that I had a problem with.
Fair. Yeah,
but getting Barkley and I can't remember who else you got in that trade. Getting the production was fine with me.
Yeah, the way I kind of sliced it is, although on face value, I would probably prefer May and Worthy to Ayuk and Purdy. From a contending lens, I think that's even a slight loss, I would say. That 2025 first, I project to be in the 110 to 112 range, which I would take Barkley over straight up, and then Kmet's basically free at that point is how I evaluated it.
Yeah, I think it was a good return for Ron in his situation, to be honest.
100%.
Sorry, we did get a super. We did get a super thing. Oh, we got a super here.
Sorry. Apologies, Thomas. I didn't see it. 12-man PPR was offered a late first Charbonnet for my Henry. Derrick Henry. If that's Derrick Henry, you're taking a first and Charbonnet every single time. Yeah, even if you're competing, like
I don't think that's a slam dunk, dude. Like I like
for Henry.
Henry's like a locked and loaded top 12 running back for me this year in redraft.
What's he going to be next year?
Well, he's got a 2-year deal. He's definitely has a chance to play next year.
Are we sure he's going to be the same player next year? He's 29 years old.
No, I'm not sure, but I don't think this is
I'm cashing every single
probably
time.
an even trade for both sides, to be honest.
Oh, if I can get a first plus for Henry, you can have your Henry. I'm selling that.
That's fair.
Time.
Yeah, I'm okay selling Henry for this if you think it's too good to pass up, but I don't think it's like an outrageous smash. You have to accept that.
I do.
As a contending team, I think holding the production
that's too much value.
Is definitely fair. Okay, we're on the clock here. Do we want to grab?
I mean, like,
is Danny Dimes too good to pass up here?
He's here on the 11th. Wow.
Yeah.
He's good. Sanat just goes. I mean, you want to Komet last round. He does fall back. Him and Goddard. We could just wait another round and see if one makes it back. I'm good with Dimes. I mean, we do have three quarterbacks.
Let's go Daniel Jones as a guy that we can just kind of, him and Ridley would be kind of like when you're building up these 1-year punts, it's not always going to work out that every player that falls to you is a young player. Yeah. Like the best available value is always a young player. So sometimes you do kind of have to be like, you know what? 9th round Calvin Ridley is a value. I'm going to take that. Or 11th round Daniel Jones. I'm going to take that. And maybe you're able to sell those guys off in mid-season. Again, it's not an elite strategy, especially if you play in leagues where people are not going to be prone to trading or whatever. But me and you play in a lot of leagues where people are moving players all the time. So
for sure.
I feel comfortable taking the odd deviation from my strategy, just knowing that I should be able to get a better value on that player at some point if their production matches up.
Yeah, for sure. By the way, so Kat says here, what would you need on top of Devontae Adams if you're selling Zay Flowers? He won't give up a first. I mean, like the difference between them is what, wide receiver 26 for me versus wide receiver 31, 32. Like, if you're competing,
it's a bigger difference for me.
Really?
Zay Flowers is my wide receiver 18.
Oh, so basically so the equivalent for me here is what on top of Devontae Adams would you need for Brian Thomas?
I guess,
for what you are.
I'd want a 1 and a 2 swap, probably.
I'm just not incentivized to make that move right now then if he's unwilling.
Yeah. If you're selling Zay Flowers and he's not going to give you Adams in a first for Flowers in a second, I'm probably not doing it.
Yeah. Like you have no incentive to move your Zay Flowers at this point of the offseason, knowing inherently that Adams only negative can happen to his value. Zay Flowers only positive can happen to his value.
Yeah. It's difficult, man. I after the reception perception stuff has come out, the more I think about it, man, like I'm Zay Flowers is my wide receiver 1 from last year's class in terms of my overall dynasty rankings at this point. Like, do you have any receivers from last year's class who love Zay Flowers in your dynasty rankings?
I do.
Or sorry, not Puka Nacua. I forgot Puka Nacua.
Yeah. So outside of Puka, okay, that's fair. So
that would be insane if I had Flowers over Puka.
Okay, let me look through it right now. So I'll probably swap Dell and Flowers, knowing Flowers goes ahead of him in redraft, and Dell also has more target competition. I think he's in a tier for me with him, Ladd, and Worthy is about where I can get to. So
I'm talking about last year's class, though.
No, I know. I'm talking where I have him overall. So
wide receiver but among wide receivers in last year's class, outside of Puka Nacua, is he wide receiver 2 for you in last year's class based on where you have him ranked? Or do you have Addison, Tank Dell, JSN, any of those guys ahead of him?
Well, that's what I was mentioning. I technically had Dell higher, but when I'm actually contextualizing the fact that I'm going to have Zay Flowers higher in redraft and best ball, and he has less target competition, I'm going to move Zay Flowers over him, and I'm probably going to move Tank Dell behind T. Higgins. So on the cuff, like right off fucking reactions here, Zay Flowers ends up as my 22. And like I was saying, I think he's in a tier for me with Ladd McConkey 20, Xavier Worthy 21, Zay Flowers 22, along with DJ Moore at 19 and Brian Thomas at 18. Is kind of how I do that area.
Yeah, that's fair. I have him, atop of that tier because I have Worthy and McConkey a little higher than, not higher than you, but I have Thomas lower than you, and I have Higgins. It sounds like a little bit higher than you, but yeah, I feel pretty good about those guys. To be honest, as like third wide receivers when you're doing a startup.
So do you have Higgins over or under DJ Moore?
I have Higgins over DJ Moore.
Ooh, interesting.
Okay, so I think Tony Pollard is another one of these players that we just kind of have to take because he's not supposed to be on the board.
I mean, we do have Tajay, but like you said, we don't give a shit about that. We're trying to.
I mean, we
accumulate
also need a tight end, and Dalton Schultz kind of represents a little bit of a tier break for me on the board as well.
I don't mind Schultz, but I mean, I swear we've said this at every pick. I also don't mind waiting on Tucker Kraft, but he's going to be gone by the next pick anyway, so we may as well just take one.
Let's take Dalton Schultz here. If Pollard falls back to us, I'd be shocked, but yeah, I think we needed to just pull the trigger on a tight end because we were waiting a long time there.
It's just, by the way, wait. Oh shit. Okay, I can actually see every team from this view. Okay, so, Benson. Yeah. Okay, I feel you. But yeah, like I was saying, if we had waited on tight end there, I can guarantee that Tucker Kraft would have been gone by our next pick, knowing this room.
Yeah, no kidding. Bailey says, "Sup, boys, joining from the break room at work. Love to see it." Cody asked an interesting question. He says, "Question on the logistics side of things. When you update your dynasty rankings on Flock, does it automatically get transferred over to the trade calculator and team viewer?" That is correct.
Yep.
Right now, if me or Danny updates our rankings on Flock, our dynasty rankings or whatever, and you're trying to use the trade calculator with our names as the trade calculator thing, that I'll share my screen really quick to show you guys what I mean. But basically what happens right away after we update our rankings is it does go right to the trade calculator, and we don't currently have the functionality in place yet that our my team section can be viewed based on just my rankings or just Danny's rankings, but we will have that very shortly. So yeah, that's a good question though.
Yeah, we have a lot of stuff in store for this site. I'm pretty damn excited.
Yeah, I'll show exactly what Cody's talking about. So you can see right here, it says Danny's rankings or it says my rankings. I updated my rankings this morning. You can see it says 5/17, which is today's date. And it is instant too. I believe it's within probably 5 seconds, but at the latest 30 minutes if there's any kind of site delays or lags. So yeah, that's what he's referring to. And then if you go to the my team section and we go to like one of my teams or whatever, you can see that. Let me go to a team where I'm on top just because I want to.
Asshole.
Yeah, sorry, because Danny's on top of that league and it was scaring me. So I'm going to this league here. You could see, like, again, we haven't plugged this much, but you can actually submit your team for us to review, and we'll send you like a 5-minute video podcast basically about your team, similar to the way we would do it in Dynasty Decisions, only it's instantaneous. And anybody that's an annual mother flocker using promo code FSE will actually have access to this. You'll get a free voucher for it. And of course, too, if you're just joining us, we are on the last day basically of our listener league drawing, and we will be doing a listener dynasty startup very soon here. I don't know why this is
to answer Jared's question. Yes. So if you guys have been unaware, we've been taking the submissions for that listener league drawing, and we're expecting to do that this weekend. So if you want to get in and you are a site subscriber, annual flocker, annual mother flocker, annual flockers get 1 submission, annual mother flockers get 2. Make sure you fill that form out today, because again, after today, we're not accepting more submissions. We are going to be drawing the league. And if you are a site subscriber, this is one of your perks. This is one of your ways to play in a league with us. So you may as well take advantage of it, because we don't know if you're interested unless you fill out that submission.
Yep, for sure. So we're back on the clock here. Do we want to take another upside swing at RB because we're so strong at wide receiver? We could grab like Chase a Javon Brown. Baker or somebody if we wanted to do that, or Jalen McMillan is still on the board. But I like Chase Brown. Yeah, he's a good option here.
13th round, Chase Brown. He goes higher in underdog drafts right now in best ball.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I love that. Also, I really like the value here on Wright and Wicks. That's fun.
Yeah, Wright going that low is pretty
Douglas.
Crazy.
Let's go. The boy DeMario Douglas. For those of you that don't know, I may as well just have to brand as a DeMario Douglas stan.
You are a DeMario Douglas fan. Bailey says, just got a new job. Got to get my Mother Flocker subscription back again. Yeah, Bailey, if you want to get on that ASAP, because you could have a chance to win a spot in our listener league as well.
Yes, sir.
Also, no glaze, no Diddy. Is this like a new phrase right here?
Wait. Sorry. Wasn't it not Andrew the other day when somebody's like, hey, I just found this channel. I love what you guys are doing. You guys are awesome and stuff. And then he just replies, the glaze is for real.
Something like that. It might have been Andrew. I'm not sure. Is Pollard a decent buy for a competing roster? If you can get him at the 12-7 price tag that he went in this startup draft, then absolutely he's a good buy. Because to me, I look at Pollard as like kind of a prototypical dead zone running back in redraft. But I mean, could he have like a 2022 Miles Sanders season and be RB 20 in points per game? Absolutely. And that could be valuable if you just paid a mid to late second for him or something like that.
For sure. And I mean, to be honest, mid to late second, like that doesn't even like we talked about it, but in sharper leagues, man, like it feels like you can even get Pollard plus a small piece on that at this point. for a second.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I agree with you.
2025
Ambiguity, sorry, he says these memberships don't link to the flock. It would promote more, in my opinion. I'm not sure what you mean, ambiguity, but the link in the description of the chat should bring you to.
I think he's talking about why YouTube memberships don't link to flock, but there's just different pricing for both of those.
Yeah. The YouTube memberships and the flock are different, if that's what you're wondering. The YouTube membership all it gets you is priority comments, which is priority. Why it's like super cheap.
Yeah, 100%. Loki, that was me who said chill. It was him. I knew it. I knew it was Andrew.
So Nathan, speaking of team reviews, Nathan got one yesterday. So a quick plug to that. And I told him in that review, because he had, I think it was Mahomes, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and Stafford. I was like, you got to offload in a one quarterback one of those guys. And he said, would y'all trade Jaden Daniels for Jaden Reed? In a one quarterback league, I probably would, to be honest.
I mean, especially knowing the context, like Corey just said. I mean, you would have done the team review. You would know more context on it. Actually,
he needed wide receivers. He only had like Worthy and McConkey and like nothing really else at wide receiver. And he's in a long-term rebuild, and he already has Drake May, Patrick Mahomes, and Matthew Stafford at quarterback.
Also, funny enough, Nathan was I'll just disclose this now, give you guys a little peek behind the curtains. But tomorrow, you guys have been requesting it for a while. You guys have been talking about wanting an updated Dynasty trade show. So for tomorrow's video, we will be putting that live. And I believe Nathan actually had a trade on there.
Yeah, he did. And Wanye did too, which is why he's asking about it. So we will have that video live for you guys tomorrow on the site. Okay, this will be the last pick of the mock draft here.
We're doing another? Or?
No, we're not going to do another startup mock draft. What do you mean?
We
want people to watch this back. That's one thing I've noticed, Danny. Sometimes maybe you were joking, but like sometimes you're just like, yeah, we're gonna do another mock. It's like, dude, we've been streaming for 2 hours already. Like in some cases, it's like, no, we're not doing another mock draft. We want people to rewatch this. But anyways, is this the point that we actually select Quentin Johnston, or am I high?
I mean, where do you have him overall in your dynasty rankings?
He's like about an early third round rookie pick price tag, and Malachi Corley, Jalen McMillan are on the board, who are basically in that range for me in terms of my rookie pick prices.
Quentin Johnson, I have. So where did you mention it?
I'd have to look at where he is in my startup rank.
173 overall.
We're at 10 seconds on the board here.
I have him at 173 overall. I don't know where this point is, but if you want Quentin Johnson, go nuts. It's a mock draft.
You know what? I'm gonna bypass QJ, and we're gonna take Jalen McMillan here.
Yeah, that's.
We're gonna re-roll into the fresh profile here instead of the fade winner.
Plus, I mean, the decider there, the tiebreaker is your Buccaneers loyalty, right? So
absolutely, yeah. And
it is crazy.
So me and Danny got in a little bit of a heated debate in the chat today in the group chat, because I'm of the opinion, if you want to show the full board, by the way, while I'm talking, I'm of the opinion that the Cowboys are going to take a severe dirt nap this year, because they've lost a lot of pieces on their offensive line. Tyler Biotish, Tyron Smith. They've lost some pieces in their defensive rotation. Dante Fowler, Dorrance Armstrong, those type of guys. They've also lost their running back in Tony Pollard. They don't have any wide receiver depth behind CeeDee Lamb, in my opinion. Even though Gallup wasn't good, at least he was like functional X that could draw coverage.
I'll give my rebuttal. So you said the offensive line. I would even argue BB's an upgrade, especially from a run blocking perspective, to what Biotish was last year. He could not handle big noses in the interior. I mean, evidenced by the fact you literally watched live Vita Vea dirt nap him in week 1 a couple years ago. You remember that game? So I actually
he was better last year.
He's a solid pass blocker, but he always struggles against very, very strong interior defensive linemen. And the one thing I can say about BB is he's a stronger player in that interior. I'll give you credit. Tyron Smith, big loss. When he is playing on the field, he is an elite tackle. But at the same time, his availability has been a question mark for these last few years. So I understand why they did what they did. Plus, they invested first-round capital back into the position. You mentioned losses on defense. They drafted an edge to supplement some of that edge loss there with Armstrong and with Fowler. They got Neeland in the second round. Trayvon Diggs, they're all pro stud cornerback, missed 95% of the season last year. And they got
coming off of a major injury. You lost Stephon Gilmore also.
It happened early in the season, though, so I'm assuming he'll be more ready than if it happened later on in the season. And I think we completely revamped our linebacker core. And you mentioned the defensive line.
I didn't, but I think your defensive coordinator was a downgrade. Let me finish my whole spiel on it, and then you rebuttal. Okay. Mike Zimmer, to me, is a downgrade to Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn was running a good defense there. I think your whole vibes of your team are bad. because as Brock points out here, all three of your best players want new contracts. And I don't think that's the greatest way to go into the offseason when you would I guarantee you agree with this. Just pay your best players and get them feeling good going into the offseason. To me, this team looks a lot like the 2022 Rams, where it was Donald, Ramsey, Stafford, and Kupp. That was the whole team. Stafford, if anybody got injured, if anybody played poorly, if anything happened, your team was going down in flames, and the 2022 Rams kind of went down in flames. To me, the Cowboys are like sealing a 10-11 win team that probably gets bounced round one in the playoffs because their team isn't deep enough, isn't good enough, isn't well coached enough, all that kind of stuff. And then the floor for me is like the 2022 Rams, where you could actually like potentially only win like 7 or 8 games.
I mean, that year Stafford also missed significant time. B,
right, but that's my argument against the Cowboys is that
Dak will get hurt.
One of your stars, whether it's Dak, Parsons, or Lamb, misses any, like if Parsons misses time on your defense, you're in severe trouble. If Lamb misses time, you're in severe trouble.
You can say that about any team. If they lose their
that's true, but like other teams have more depth to be able to, you don't tread water for a while.
You don't tread without your studs. And to be fair, I would argue that the Cowboys did the best job out of this in the last few years when Dak missed 5 games. So it's like we've seen history of them being able to perform without them in the past. Yes, I fully understand that if Dak misses significant time, if Parsons misses significant time, but projecting that to a team that didn't tangibly get worse on paper, and I personally believe
they got worse on paper. But
I completely disagree. Getting Diggs back alone is a huge upgrade for the defense, for the record. But first of all, you're saying Quinn is an upgrade over Zimmer. I would disagree, specifically when it comes to top-end talent, top-end teams in the NFC. The one thing we noticed about Dan Quinn is when it came on the line in those big games against those big-time offenses, his defense would always fold. Nothing I will question about Quinn in terms of kicking the shit cans around. He can kick the shit cans around. He can make the Giants look like the worst offense in the NFL because his defense, the way it relied upon momentum, was unlike any other defense in the league. With Zimmer, he's got a better proven track record against LaFleur, against Shanny, against that style of offense, to the point where while the ceiling of the defense against the worst teams isn't as there compared to what it was with Quinn, I do think the floor against good teams a lot higher than what we saw last year. So I'm not arguing saying, oh yeah, the Cowboys are going to go to the NFC Championship, the Cowboys are going to win the Super Bowl, because that's not my realistic expectation, but I expect similar to what we've seen these past couple years, 11-12 wins, probably losing the divisional round to a team like the Niners or the Packers. That's probably how I would envision the season playing out. But the people that are saying like Cowboys are a 500 team, they didn't get tangibly worse. I don't know how a team with Dak, a team with CD, a team with Parsons has a floor under 9 wins. I don't see it at all.
Last thing, we'll put a button on this conversation. The reason that I kind of agree with the Fantasy Plumber, I don't think they're a 500 team, but I think that's their floor. They could be under 500 if things go wrong. Is, again, because it's a top-heavy team that's poorly coached, that has bad vibes around it. That sounds like the 2022 Rams to me. That's, again, why I would say it has a potential that the bottom falls out and Dak re-signs somewhere else next offseason. Mike McCarthy is fired. Hopefully you still maintain Parsons and Lamb, which would be really dumb if you couldn't do that. But, again, I think that the vibes are sketchy. They're sketchy.
Sorry, I will fight back on this. Sure, maybe they didn't get better on paper, but point to me the exact
You said they didn't get worse, and they got worse on
I don't think they got worse at all, actually, to be honest. Tyron Smith, sure, but he's also played half the season in these last few years.
When he's again, you can't say we're not projecting players to get injured and then say that Tyron Smith is injury prone in the same sentence.
Sure, but at the same time, if we're already planning in advance, a 33-year-old tackle probably going to miss 6+ games.
You can't do that, because I just said what happens if things go wrong with Dak, Lamb, or
and they have gone wrong.
You're like, we're projecting health.
And they have gone wrong with Tyron specifically in these last few years, and the Cowboys have been
they've gone wrong with Dak too. Like you can't do that.
And the Cowboys have won.
That they're going to stay healthy. The Cowboys have won.
And the Cowboys have won 36 games in the last 3 years, despite those injuries.
They're a different team now. That's my point.
I don't think they are, though. I don't think they are.
Anyways,
like I would say
we can go back and forth on this for hours. Danny obviously is a Cowboys fan, so he's going to look at them with rose-colored glasses.
I mean, you're a Cowboys hater, admittedly.
I'm not a Cowboys hater, dude. I've been accurate on them the last 2 years. I said that they're like 12-win regular season teams that are going to get bounced by a 6.
You said the Eagles would demolish them last year. That's what you said. You said all offseason the Eagles would demolish them, and I mean, you mentioned Vegas when we were talking in the chat. The Cowboys and the Eagles have the exact same odds for the division right now. So
I
don't know why people are so
these teams are better than the Cowboys. I said the Niners, the
Niners,
Rams,
Packers. I'll give you that.
the
Niners and
Packers,
Packers.
the
Niners
Eagles,
and Packers.
and the Lions are better than the Cowboys.
So
And you said
a
I
team-
was delusional, even though 4 of those 5 teams have the same over-under, if not better, in the Niners case.
So Packers and Niners, I will give you that, especially if Jordan Love becomes the quarterback. I think he can. I think they are the clear second best team if Jordan Love becomes the guy that I think he will this season. After that, Cowboys beat the Lions last year. The Cowboys beat the Rams last year.
Their secondary is massively better than it was last year.
Sure, but at the same time, we will see in Jerry World this year, right?
Okay, that's fair. But again,
people are just so quick to
rely only on last year's data when your team got worse and the other team got better.
Okay, people are so quick to raise the Lions when they beat the Rams and the Buccaneers in the playoffs and then lost to the Niners like every other team would have. Like, that was the path that we thought the Cowboys would take. Unfortunately, the Cowboys couldn't handle business against the Packers, and I would argue that the Packers were probably the second best NFC team in the playoffs last year, to be honest. They just got unlucky that they
were
had to play
definitely
in
a
San
great
Francisco
team.
round 2. So
again, all I'm arguing is that the Cowboys are like somewhere between the 5th and 7th best team in the NFC right now.
Yeah, like that's absurd to me. They're within the 3rd and 5th best team.
I don't know. To me, I look at it this way: the Niners are the best team in the NFC. The Packers, Eagles, and Lions all got better. While
why are the
Eagles
worse? So much better than last
Quinyon
year?
Mitchell?
Sure.
And Cooper DeJean isn't getting better?
We say that after their draft every single year. We said Nolan Smith was going to be the best game-changing player on their defense. We said that Jordan Davis would have been that guy. I mean, at the end of the day, it comes on the grass. It doesn't come in the spreadsheets. We've seen the last 3 years.
It doesn't come in the spreadsheets, but if you guys drafted Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, you would be saying you're a Super Bowl contender, and that is.
I would not be, actually. I would not be.
The Cowboys had drafted Quinyon Mitchell last year in the first round.
I would not be.
Cooper DeJean in the second round, you would be
I absolutely would not be
the best secondary in the league.
I absolutely would not be, A, and B, we said the exact same thing, how they won the offseason when they traded for A.J. Brown, when they drafted Jordan Davis, when they drafted Nolan Smith. At the end of the day, your roster can say one thing.
Dude, your roster isn't good, though. Like, you're making the argument that rosters aren't good on paper, but your roster isn't that good.
We just talked about how we disagreed with the Cowboys getting tangibly worse from a roster standpoint. I would say
everybody
losing
in
Tyron.
The comment section probably agrees that their losses are stacking against them, except for you.
Okay, because I actually followed the team, and I know from a roster standpoint, adding an all-pro cornerback absolutely offsets your injury-prone 33-year-old tackle that just left, which you also drafted his replacement in round 1. So, like, I don't see it at all.
You're only focusing on one of your losses, bro. You lost a lot of shit, bro.
Who else of significance is actually going to determine the win column for the Cowboys?
Depth is what my argument is.
Like, what depth did they actually lose? 2
your starting center.
Yeah, and we drafted our starting center. Okay,
your 3rd and 4th defensive linemen that are pass rushing
on Pollard. We argued all throughout the fantasy season last year that Dowdle was just as efficient as Tony Pollard was. Just as efficient. And I mean, you can look at the number, you can look at the data, it'll back that up. So, like, what we're arguing a mid-running back last year leaving the team as a significant loss.
I'm not arguing just Pollard. I'm arguing the collection of the losses that you had. Tyron, Biotish, Pollard, Dorrance Armstrong, all those guys, plus Gilmore in the secondary, plus your defensive coordinator. I'm not
supplemented
saying
a lot of those in the draft.
Is a big loss. I'm saying that all of them collectively are big losses.
We supplemented a lot of those positions of depth in the draft. And again, depth does not lose you games.
You hit on those positions.
Sure. At the end of the day, I think your stars are more likely to win you games than depth is to lose you games.
Okay, but if we're operating on the same exact supplementing of positions for your team, then we have to operate under that principle for the Lions and for the Eagles and for the Rams and the other teams that lost players as well.
The Cowboys beat last year,
if you're arguing that your guy is going to come in day one and start at left tackle when a lot of scouts didn't believe that to be the case, then Quinyon Mitchell is going to be a great corner because a lot of scouts believed he was going to be an elite corner. You know what I mean?
Sure, but at the same time, their secondary was still a big weakness last year, and expecting any rookie to immediately make a huge impact is a rookie mistake.
Okay, well, rookie corner and rookie left tackle are both difficult positions to adjust.
100%, but I would argue 5 games of Tyron and 11 games of insert Chuma Adoka in here. Like, that's just as valuable as just getting 17 from your rookie.
I don't know, dude. Guyton is a guy that like people are a little bit lower on.
And he's working with Duke Manyweather. And when's the last time the Cowboys have missed on an offensive lineman?
Again, my argument is you guys got a little bit worse.
I just
other teams around you in your vicinity for how good they are in the NFC got better. And I think marginally better more so than you guys got worse.
Fair. But at
Like
the same
Terry and
time,
Arnold, Carlton Davis, that's huge
yeah,
for the Lions, man. That is huge.
it absolutely is. But at the same time, I trust our superstar talent against the Lions. I'm not saying the Lions aren't a good team for the record. Like, they're deserving of their win total. I just don't think they're going to beat us in Jerry World this year.
Okay, but like that's one game.
Sure, but at the same time,
like they're going to have a better record than you, and they're going to have a home game versus you in the playoffs if you meet, in my opinion, because they're going to have a better record.
Why are they going to have a home game against us?
Because if they have a better record than you,
oh, okay. I thought you meant round one. I thought you meant round one.
Beat you at home.
I thought you were implying that the Cowboys are only going to get the wild card spot.
I mean, maybe that would be the most likely path they play each other. But I think the Lions are the second best team in the NFC, and I think they'll probably be like the 2 seed. Hey. And if you guys are the 3 seed, or if you're the 5 seed or the 6 seed, then you'll play the Lions. Had you have to play them.
Hey, I'm cool with saying that the Lions will have a better record, but acting like they're a tier ahead of any team in the 3 to 5 range is just flawed, in my opinion.
I think the Lions roster is significantly better than yours, and I think they're a way better coach team as well. So it's not just about on paper.
Sure, but at the end of the day, I mean, outside of the 49ers, and like I said, if the Packers ascend, the 3 to 5, 3 to 6 range in the NFC is
you're not in that range to me. I don't think
are.
I think it's the way that I would rank it is San Fran's in a tier of their own.
I'd agree.
Lions, Eagles, Packers in the next tier, in my opinion.
Why do the Eagles get the benefit of the doubt when the Cowboys don't? They had a worse end to last year than the Cowboys did.
Let me finish. This is my ranking of the NFC. San Francisco, number 1. Number 2 to 4, in some order, would be the Lions, the Eagles, and the Packers. And then in the next tier below that is
not a tier.
The Rams, the Cowboys, and then they maybe even be in their own little mini tier because I think that there's a lot of teams that have a lot of upside. I think the Bears and Vikings, depending on how good their quarterbacks play, have a good chance to be up there. I think my own team, the Buccaneers, have a good chance to be up there. I think the Falcons have a chance to be up there as well. There's teams the Cowboys in the NFC that I can't just say, oh yeah, Cowboys are like the 3rd best team.
You're just tearing the Cowboys one spot down. Like they would be in the 2nd tier. Cause I mean, at the same time, we're talking about proven track record. Like I don't care if the Cowboys haven't made the end, obviously like from a fan perspective, but what you can't argue is that in the regular season, they haven't won the 2nd most games in the NFL after the Chiefs in the last 3 years.
They have, but I don't care what you've done in the last 3 years. I literally don't care.
Their roster is not tangibly worse.
Coaching staff isn't good.
For the regular season,
are upset because they haven't gotten contract extensions.
For the regular season, they lost a lot of depth.
That is my argument against your team.
Okay, but that's what I don't understand. Why are they tangibly worse on paper? I don't understand why this sentiment's around.
It's the collection of the losses. That's
they got an all-pro cornerback back from a torn ACL last year. That offsets the Tyron leave. And then you're arguing edge 4 and 5 leaving. Like I could care less. We just drafted one in the 2nd round. Like edge depth, edge 4 and 5 is not going to make a difference on the win record.
I'm arguing against depth because things happen in the span of a football season where you lose players for a couple games here and there.
It's just what I don't get is after the catastrophic end to the Eagle season last year, why are they suddenly so much more glowing than what the Cowboys are? I would argue the Eagles meltdown was 10 times worse than the Cowboys was.
No, it was not.
They lost the Eagles 5 of their last 6 games.
No, they were bad down the stretch of the season, but you guys like lost to like a 6 seed in the playoffs when you were like a 12-win team.
I would argue the Packers, the way that they were playing in those 2 playoff games they played last year, would have beat the Lions, would have beat the Bucks, would have beat the Eagles, would have beat everybody in that field except for the Lions or the Niners.
Yeah, no, the Packers were a good team. I'm not saying they were a bad team. I'm just saying like you guys, there's a lot of turnover. There's a lot of negative press around. Like it's vibes, it's depth, it's everything around your team suggests that they are a fragile operation that could melt down.
What about it, though? They've won 36 games in the last 3 years. Like, they've been arguably the most consistent team in the last 3 years.
They've won one playoff game, though, also in those last 3 years. And it was against us, and we were fucking horrible.
We're not talking about playoff games. We're talking about who will finish higher in terms of tier. And if the Cowboys have won 36 games in the last 3 years, how are they more volatile than the other top teams?
Because I just don't get that going back to like 3 years ago, they've gotten marginally worse each year. And now this is the year that I think the losses, the vibes, and the coaching staff changes will stack up against you guys. Again, it's just my argument.
Brock, are we forgetting that the Packers almost beat the Niners as well? Like, it literally took Jordan Love throwing a game-changing interception to change that game. The Packers were up by 10, no?
Yeah. Again, this is an interesting debate. Maybe you guys hate this. Sure. Maybe you guys enjoy this. I don't know. The bet that the point of this entire conversation was that me and Danny have a bet that the Bucks versus the Cowboys what's the straight up record, who goes further in the thing, in the whole dance. And again, I'm an idiot for making this bet because clearly the Cowboys have Vegas's vote. They're higher in terms of over under, but we have the easier division. You know, there's a chance that we get a home playoff game out of it and that kind of thing. We're also not complete choke artists like your franchise. We have a better coach team as well. To me, the vibes are better around our team right now. Everybody's happy. We just had a great offseason of extending people. Antoine Winfield got extended. Mike Evans got extended. Sure. Baker Mayfield got extended. Levante David got re-signed. The GM and coaching staff appears to be pretty strong and stable and not going to get fired if things go wrong this year. So again, to me, I just look at, again, we talk about what matters on paper, what matters during games. It's like a team coming together and accomplishing a common goal is what needs to happen on Sundays. And to me, my team is a lot closer to that because our roster is as good, if not better, and our coaching staff and our leaders are actually showing up.
Wait, to the Cowboys roster, they're as good, if not better?
Yeah, I think we have a better roster than
you are trolling.
Yeah.
You're joking,
I mean,
right?
you remove quarterback. I think our roster's better.
You can't just remove quarterback.
Well, that's what roster's totality of the team.
Okay. Including quarterback and including the rest of the roster. We stack up either way. Like, let's not get that twisted.
We want to go position by position because we'll do this if we want to. Because we're going totality wide receiver core. It's not even close. You have the better number one receiver.
An elite wide receiver, yes. I don't care.
Our receiver is not just as elite, but he's very elite also.
Lamb and Cooks clears Evans and Godwin. Let's get that out of the way.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do.
The difference between Lamb and Evans is smaller than the difference between Godwin and Cooks.
You're joking, right?
No, I'm not joking, dude. My guy's a Hall of Famer.
Lamb's a top 3 to 4 receiver in the league right now. What are we doing?
Okay. My guy's a Hall of Famer. And he's a top 10 receiver in the league.
He's also 31 years old and top 10 to 12 area. Sure. Like you have a guy that's going to have 1,800 yards.
Okay. Now let's also add in totality of wide receiver core. Let's also add in Jalen McMillan and Trey Palmer too, because then we beat you 3 and 4 as well.
Your wide receiver 3 and 4 are not going to change the landscape of CeeDee Lamb being a top 3
but
to 4 receiver.
But it's a totality of the wide receiver core. You have one good receiver. One.
If we're including Jake Ferguson in that discussion, we clear you by a lot.
K-Dot and Jake Ferguson. Come on, Jake Ferguson's better. Fine, whatever. It's not a huge difference.
Brother, they're in different fucking atmospheres.
No, they're not.
What?
They're both mid tight ends.
What?
Neither of them are needle movers.
Bro, Jake Ferguson was sick last year. What are we talking about?
The wide receiver core as a whole is better, in my opinion.
No shot.
The offensive line isn't even close, in my opinion. Ours is way better than yours.
What?
We have the best left tackle in football, first of all.
Okay,
let's start with that. Our right tackle took a massive step forward last year.
He's still not better. If Steele is healthy, he's still not better than Terrence Steele. Sure. We have Cooper Beebe. We have Zach Martin, a first ballot walk-in Hall of Famer.
Okay, Tyler Zach Martin and Tristan Wirfs cancel each other out. Let's do the rest of the offensive line.
Tyler Smith, arguably a top 3 guard in football last year.
Luke Gadecki was second team All-Pro.
So was fucking Tyler Smith. What are we talking about here? Tyler Smith is better than him.
Okay. Again, Graham Barton is better than your next best offensive lineman by a landslide.
Sure, he's better than Cooper Beebe.
Yeah. Okay.
So is really
Cody Mock was a rookie last year. He has a chance to take a step forward.
Guyton's better than him. Guyton's better than him. Guyton's going to be better than him. Are you projecting Cody Mock to be better than Guyton?
No.
Okay, because that would be the next.
Again, totality of offensive line, including coaching as well. I believe ours is better than yours.
No, absolutely not. You guys have a better running back, sure, and Rashad White's that's not saying much.
Okay, we have a better running back. I wasn't gonna even really care about that, to be honest, but.
And then defensively, we still on
defensive line. You guys kick the shit out of us because you have Parsons.
Secondary, we still do absolutely. Trayvon Diggs back.
So, to be honest.
Deron Bland
Diggs and Winfield cancel each other out.
Deron Bland was,
and I would argue Winfield's a better player at his position than Diggs is at his. But you got a corner. He's a more important position.
Deron Bland's better than anybody else you have in your secondary. He was an All-Pro last year. You can't argue otherwise.
Yeah, that's probably true. I'll give you that.
Kalen Carson's probably going to be our nickel / Jordan Lewis, who's solid.
Our Whitehead and Jamel Dean and Zion
cancel
McCollum
them out. Sure,
solid NFL starters. It's like we don't have
Jordan Lewis was too
secondary, but our secondary is extremely well coached, and we have the best safety in the league.
Jordan Lewis was too. Malik Hooker and Donovan Wilson is a good safety core. Juwan Thomas is a good third.
Okay,
Cowboys secondary is good, and
it's solid. I don't know.
I would argue linebackers outside of like Levante David obviously is going to probably give you guys the edge there, but at the same time, it's not like you guys have a strong linebacker.
Our DTs are way better than yours too.
Like and our edges mop you guys.
Parsons, but we have
and
our DTs
Lawrence.
Are like probably one of the best duos in the league. I believe Kancey's going to take a huge step forward.
So we kind of went through it here. And again, we disagree on the offensive line and the wide receivers. Chat can let us know on that, but I think the Cowboys win that pretty decidedly personally. And then you combine that with the fact that Dak Prescott is a top 5 to 8 quarterback, and Baker Mayfield is a top 15 to 20.
He's not. Best. Come on, chat.
Yes,
let him know that that's an outrageous take. Let him know that
he
Dak
was
is a top
second team
5 to 8
All-Pro last year.
Outrageous take.
He was second team All-Pro. What are we doing?
He's a great quarterback, but he's
People
not
are
top
fucking
5.
Just love hating on Dak.
I don't love to hate Dak. I think he's a good quarterback. He's a franchise dude. He's not a top 5 to 8 quarterback.
Okay, I think I will say this right now.
I would pay him if I was you guys. I'm not hating on Dak.
Lamar Jackson, in my opinion, Lamar Jackson, objectively, in my opinion, is a higher ranked quarterback than Dak. But at the same time, if we're going to give fucking Cowboys and Dak shit for playoff failures, what are we doing with Lamar Jackson? Lamar Jackson's been objectively worse in the playoffs than Dak Prescott, a guy who I think is a better quarterback. I think Lamar Jackson is better. So, like, what are we doing here?
I don't know, dude. People, chat said top 10, too.
Yeah, like, sure, okay. It said 5 to 8. Is it really saying he's 9 or 10?
5 is high, bro. 5 is really high.
In that range, I view after the top 4 a big tier. Like, that's how I view it. Again, if you want to argue he's on the lower end of that spectrum, fine. But at the same time, it's like, what are we doing here? Regardless if it's top 5 to 8 or top 6 to 10, you still got a franchise quarterback that, I'm sorry, Baker Mayfield's a solid stopgap. He's not going to be your franchise guy.
No, it's the whole team. It's the whole team that makes Baker go.
Hey, Ethan,
our coaching staff kicks the living daylights out of yours.
Ethan, Lamar MVP, bruh, absolutely. Dak was second in MVP. Are we forgetting that? Like, I don't understand.
Everyone's talking. You guys can't get it done when it counts. It's true.
And what are we talking about with the Ravens then? I literally just said Lamar Jackson, I think, is an objectively better quarterback than Dak. Where the fuck is the flack for Lamar Jackson not making it done?
In case you haven't noticed, people rip on Lamar consistently. Like, I know it's because you guys you're focused on Cowboys Twitter, but like Lamar gets bare shit for not winning anything.
I mean, to be fair, people hating on the Cowboys Twitter and Cowboys Pro Twitter just takes over Twitter, it feels like.
Anyways, we got to put a wrap on this discussion here because we've been talking about this for way too long. We have 2 supers we got to get to. Somehow people are actually still talking fantasy after all this nonsense. But JM says Richardson for DJ Moore in London, have Burrow and Allen already.
Just doesn't seem like enough.
Yeah, I think I'd want slightly more for Richardson, in my opinion.
Like,
can you swap him?
Can you get a haul for
a wide receiver rather than getting 2?
Or can you get a haul for Burrow?
Yeah, I mean, you could sell one of the other QBs as well. I'd be okay selling Richardson of that group, but I would personally want, like, if you could sell Richardson for like Amon-Ra or like Harrison or Garrett Wilson, Puka plus, I would do that.
Having a tight end that has had 1,100 plus yards and Zay Flowers on your team isn't a good wide receiver core. Like, I understand if you said Lamar didn't have receivers like 2-3 years ago or even in that first MVP, but at this point, he absolutely does. Like, we've got to stop making that argument.
I mean, he's got one and a tight end.
But it feels like people are so quick to diminish the wide receiver core. Like, Mark Andrews, from a real life perspective, is a top 3 tight end in the NFL.
Yeah, he's great.
I'm
not arguing against Lamar. I think Lamar is a choke artist too.
Yeah, no, but that's what I'm saying. It's like people will diminish him because he hasn't gotten done in the playoffs. But realistically, man, outside of Mahomes, who has like had a very, very strong playoff resume?
Burrow.
He made 1 Super Bowl.
Well, he beat Mahomes to get there. So
sure, but his defense,
and he's also beaten Mahomes other times too.
His defense held Mahomes' offense, the Chiefs' offense, under 20 points.
Well, you asked who else has had a strong resume. Fair. If we're gonna say who's number 2, it's probably Burrow.
Fair, no, and I agree, but it's funny because it's like,
or maybe Purdy, to be honest.
People, yeah, fuck. I mean, if Shanahan in that defense, fuck. I wish Dak had that situation. Evan Ingram worth it to go from a Doomsday to Neighbors. If I can upgrade from a Doomsday to Neighbors using Ingram, I'm doing that every time.
Yeah, and I like Odunze too, and I think Evan Ingram's worth something. But yeah, I'll take Neighbors there.
Stop acting like Zay is a top wide receiver. Well, actually, based on every separation metric you can find, I mean, specifically Matt Harmon.
Also, I agree with.
He's really good.
Zay is a great player, but stats wise, Allen has been good enough to win.
I agree.
The playoffs. He just hasn't had the wins actually go his way.
That's why I think Allen's the second best quarterback in the NFL. Like I've been Allen number 2 for what, 3 years now, 4 years?
Yeah, for sure. So, anyways,
like, I'm not arguing against
a button on
Josh
this
Allen.
thing. It's an hour and 18. We got 20 minutes of Cowboys discussion out of here.
That's a good time.
We'll put timestamps if you guys want to go watch this back and actually hear the fantasy draft. But maybe you were interested in that. I don't know. Leave a like if you enjoyed it. Leave a dislike if you didn't enjoy it. It actually boosts us in the algorithm regardless, to be honest. So we'll take that either way. But Appreciate you guys for sticking around through all that absolute nonsense. Like I said, the bet is actually whoever wins more games, Buccaneers versus Cowboys, and playoff success is factored in as well. So if the Cowboys win 11 games hypothetically and get bounced by a wild card team, like will probably happen because of the Cowboys, and the Bucs go to the NFC Championship but only won 9 games in the regular season, then obviously the Bucs would get the nod in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, basically it's the buffer. I mean, A, that's assuming the Bucs obviously go on the run, and B, what? Assuming the Cowboys lose in round 1, that would be the Bucs making it round 2.
Yeah, I mean, it would depend on how the win difference in the regular season was too. And I also think, because we've told our chat, you guys get to decide who had the more successful season. Because like if you guys lose in spectacular fashion when you were a 10-point favorite, like that's going to factor in.
How is that? The bet was literally straight up wins, not
it is. But if it goes down to playoff success because like we go an extra round than you do, or what, vice versa, or whatever, then
so
it's going to come
subjective on $100 bet. What? That's the most subjective factor I've ever heard.
That's what I said to you in the original bet. It's like if you guys win 11 games and we win 9, but we went to the divisional round and took the eventual Super Bowl champion to the wire, and you got wiped by a 6 seed and won 11 regular season games. The question is, who has the more successful season?
That was not what the bet was, actually. That was not what the bet was. The bet was who has
over and over.
The bet was who has more wins, regular season plus playoffs included, not who got bounced in less spectacular fashion.
Okay, well, I'll say who has more wins, regular season plus playoffs, but maybe the playoff wins are worth 1.5 or something.
Again, that's so subjective.
But that's my point was who had the more successful season. It's subjective inherently.
I mean, in the chat, it literally says regular season plus playoff wins, and we both agree to that.
Right, and then what did I write right after that?
What does that have to do with anything? If they're tied,
that was what I was saying.
Okay,
I was like,
if they're tied on wins, the playoff was the tiebreaker. If the Cowboys still have more wins, including playoffs, because you guys made it around further, but we finished with 3 more wins in the regular season.
Okay,
mean you win.
Who had the more successful season? I'm trying to think of what year this was. Who has the more successful season if the team wins 10 games?
That's not how betting works, bro. Betting is just not subjective. The bet was who has more combined wins in the regular season and the playoffs, not who gets bounced out in less spectacular fashion.
That's fine. But if the Cowboys win 13 games and lose in round 1 and the Bucs won the Super Bowl with a 10-win regular season, who had the more successful season?
Well, if you do the math there, you would finish with more wins.
Okay, well then I guess, maybe it'll work out that way. But whatever. Either way, Bucs versus Cowboys, who has the more successful season is the bet. We'll figure out the semantics of it. Sounds like it's going to be regular season and playoff wins. But regardless, thank you guys for joining us. If you did enjoy, subscribe, like, all that good stuff. If you want a chance, again, to be in our listener Dynasty League and see some of this nonsense going on, you will actually have a chance to do so by signing up on flockfantasy.com. Use the promo code FSE when you sign up. You'll get all of our dynasty rankings and all that good stuff. And make sure to fill out the Google form linked in the description of this video and all of our recent videos as well. And as annual flockers, you'll get 1 ballot to get into the listener league. As annual mother flockers, you get 2. And of course, you need to use promo code FSE to do that. You can't use Mason's code or anybody else's code for that. And it does have to be an annual sign up that you sign up for, but you get 6 months for free when you sign up annually. So it's the better deal anyways. But yeah, with that being said, peace out and we'll talk to you soon.